All right. Good morning, Sean. Happy
I know
Friday.
Facebook Friday in February, the last of the February Facebook Fridays.
Yeah.
Um, and I am thrilled to be back after Kate came in and did a Herculean, wonderful, notable job of replacing me. And I just got that perspective that, yes, I am replaceable to a degree. Um, but what a wonderful person to come do that. And I want to thank Kate publicly for that for sure, Jay. But it's always wonderful to be here with you and in our little connection here, which is always lovely.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I hopefully you enjoyed that reprieve of celebrating your son's 21st birthday. It's a big milestone. You got big birthdays in February and big celebrations in February. So
Yeah, February is the trifecta. There's my wedding anniversary in February 7th. There's my son who just did turn 21 on the 18th, and then my daughter Juliet, excuse me, yeah, and let me invert that. Juliet turns 18 on the 28th on Sunday. I have my nephew Zane born. His birthday was just the other day, so we're doing this whole juggling thing. But I do want to commend my son. He chose to take his family to a place where he has really strong connection. And it's interesting because most people kind of go, what? And it's Death Valley. And if you ever want to get yourself into perspective as to how big you are in the universe or how small you are in the universe, and find wide open spaces with nobody as far as your eye can see, that's a kind of place to go to. And you have a small window because it'll be a furnace in about another month and you won't want to go there. But anyway, it was a wonderful blessing to me to be able to go to detach. And the good part is I'm looking forward to the reciprocation because we know the beginning of March heralds a significant day for you and for the world of people that know you, and your birthday coming up on March the 5th. And we want to celebrate that. And you and I both know that my favorite way to celebrate that with you is probably your favorite way to celebrate with me. And that is in the form of sushi. And so and now that things are opening up legitimately, we can go experience that. I'm so excited for that. So we'll get that on the
I
calendar.
know. I know. Oh, you just started salivating. I haven't even had breakfast yet, and I've been up since quarter till 6.
I 120 minutes words a minute. And I'm like,
I know, it's fascinating how quickly, and before you know it, and then I turn things. I was like, oh my god, I already got all this stuff out, but it still seems to be the time keeps just raging on so quickly because there is so much to do and so many people to help right now. So
well, the good part is, we had really made a lot of great effort in the beginning to front load work on our listings, and the yield and the proof is in what's happening now in the yield. Pelham is a great example of sellers really taking guidance, understanding
yes,
structure and a plan of action, and implementing that plan of action. Similar with heirs, and to a degree with my buyer sitting up on Dalkeith, where they just seem to really understand, like, here's the protocol, here's the plan. It's been a fun story. We'll share a little bit later some of those successes there. And it's just been. I was laughing. What was it that you said to me yesterday? Because it was perfect. Because it's exactly what's taking place in your life daily. It's showing, writing. Help me. You remember you had four
yeah,
things there.
no, show property, write offer, counter, repeat.
Right.
Show property, write offer, counter, repeat.
I have seen you do. I've seen you do that 200 times in 3 days. Like, this person is working her butt off, and actually, her clients are just in this crazy place, which really kind of tells me that over the marketplace that there's going to be some change, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. There's going to be some interesting things I think that's going to come up, but I'm super excited to talk to our guest today because
Yes.
of all the things that I think in these times and coming out of the year 2020 with all the ironically, in a pandemic where we were supposed to isolate, overstimulation, and media input and other stresses. What a wonderful gift to have and give to yourself, to have somebody to talk to and to walk through some of the challenges we're all facing. So I'm excited to talk to Danielle.
Or have someone like myself maybe like get some help.
No comment here.
I think I'm going crazy just being a workaholic lately. I think it's not work though. If there's a passion for what we get to do. And I think that there's a delineation for me, is the fact that I really want to impact people and help them fulfill what they want to get. And so it's not as much work as just drive to help others, you know. So
Well,
that's my goal. So
Isn't there's a saying to that effect, right? That when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And we do labor at it. There are some complexities and challenges, but there's so much reward when it comes together and you see the pieces and you're able to call what the events are, and you're using your expertise to better someone else's life, and you actually impact multiple people in the transaction. It's a good thing. Our business is essential because, I mean, you know, and you have that quantification, how many people in how many different industries are involved in a real estate transaction, but it's a lot, and it's a magnitude of people that are earning a living, and that obviously is economic strength, and that's what contributes to the well-being of all of our society, hopefully. So I love being essential, but it's Friday. It's time for our guest, my dear.
Yes, I'm gonna get her in. Thanks, Sean.
Right. No worries.
Good morning, Danielle. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Danielle.
Good morning.
Well, Danielle, can you tell us a little bit about your practice and how you got into this field, and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Let's see. I work with everyone from youngins to 65 plus. And let's see, I have about 30 or so clients, active clients. Most people come in for anxiety, depression, kind of feeling overwhelmed, or currently like scared to go outside, scared to go out. I got into
That's a thing.
it is
gotta
way
be a
a
thing right
thing.
now.
Well, and it's funny because, you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, all the people I work with who are introverts are like, yes, I don't have to go anywhere. I can stay
I can
home.
stay alone. Stay away.
Totally. Like my buffer's in place. But as it's worn on, they're like, okay, now I think I admit it. I need to get out. I need to talk to somebody. I need to do something. So definitely we have seen a lot of that, like reaching out because there's nobody else to talk to. They're sick of being at home. In terms of getting into this, I, over the years, have, you know, I've a child of divorced parents. I myself have gotten divorced. I have teenagers. Actually, my daughter turned 20 yesterday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We made it through the teenage years on that one. But
the frontal lobe is now developing, right? And now her empathy skills are starting to come into play in a few years.
There's some sanity. She's come back from Mars or wherever they go. But over the years, I have used therapy, and my undergrad degree was in psychology. However, I went into publishing, magazine publishing, for many, 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 many years. And after I got divorced and then my father died, I was like, okay, I need to do something a little more meaningful with my time. I was always that person that people came to with their problems, or like, you know, my brother would hook me up with his friends as they were getting divorced, say, you should talk to my sister. She knows about this stuff. So I finally was like, okay, clearly this is a thing. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. Right. And here we are. I love it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it is gratifying to help people. I think to be in a profession that we get to help people, if we're caretakers, you know, I think it is one of those things that has that deep draw, right?
Totally.
I think what Jay is also suggesting, which is important for us to communicate to our audience, is that in fact a lot of what we do is listen and help you clarify what's most important to you. And we're trained by experience, where you are clinically trained. You're trained to really understand and how to navigate and pull away those layers. To your point, I laughed about the buffer because, as social as I am, I love my own time. I love my own space. Right. So I was like, ooh, pandemic. I gotta shut off everything.
Work at home.
Right. Exactly. I'll just be in the backyard until all of a sudden I could feel the energy of my wife walking by, and it felt like the iceberg in the Titanic. Like, oh shit, I got to get out of here. With love, Jill. With love, I say that. You have a lot of energy. You have a lot of force. But it's so interesting because it's a unique time. I mean, the need for neutral conversation and the ability to express and to communicate or to release or to discover, and all the things that you bring to the table. These are lifelong skills that, frankly, I think everyone should be able to have. And from the perspective without judgment, that's a huge part, right? Because it takes away shame and embarrassment and allows somebody to release. Like, yes, we all have weird thoughts. We all have things that we do that are strange and quirky. Everyone's unique, like like a snowflake. It's just very different. But the pandemic went womp womp womp, and it seemed to have magnified it by 100 times.
Yes, and that's something that we watch for is, if you tend toward depression or you kind of go in those peaks and valleys, watching for things like people saying they're hopeless or they're trapped or what's the point of this anyway is, that's a little bit of a red flag of like, okay, that's a little bit of suicidality there. Let's dive into this. This is dangerous. Or I tend to be a little bit OCD, and you can tell when I'm stressed because my house is immaculate. And so when the pandemic hit, I was like, ooh, I can bust out the wipes. And I of course was the one who had, a stash of hand sanitizer and wipes that would have lasted a year without, no problem.
I'm going to the store.
I've got it. Come on over. But so those kinds of things, when they start to get in the way of living or, doing your work or your schoolwork or whatever, or your relationships, that's when you need to give somebody a call and kind of get some tools to back away from those tendencies.
Yeah. Well, I know that for us, I mean, we have a family at home and other people to care for, but I always think about those that are single and that are home by themselves, and they've, been in lockdown without a large amount of human interaction for almost a year, except for via Zoom and technology. I mean, thank God we have this as a resource, but I think like at some point people should be on the breaking point, I would think. I mean, this is a long time.
It is a long time. And go ahead, Sean.
No. You were right on the stream. I apologize because my need to communicate and make it about me was in front of this. But I relate to the idea that not only is it a long time, but it because there's so much unknown and the information was so scattered that it was incredibly hard for anyone to decipher what the right path is and to be able to understand what's best for themselves and think for themselves. That's hard to do. And we have so much stimulation between the effects of media as a whole. I don't care how you want to describe it, just media, information, whether it be the radio, the television, or satellite. And then social media, whole nother thing. And I'm super interested to get your take on that, because I think that's had major impact on how we interact as a society and how people feel about themselves.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think what I have seen is, well, number one, as clients come in depressed or anxious or overwhelmed, or not even come in, actually, let's talk Zoom. When I meet with new clients about that kind of thing, the first thing we talk about is let's limit the media. Let's limit your news intake. Let's limit your social media intake.
Well, that was driven to create anxiety, isn't it? It's driven to create that, frenetic.
Yes. And so we don't need to panic any more than we already are. And, I'm a total news junkie coming out of media, and so it's like I have to turn off my little notifications on my computer or my phone or whatever. And so I ask people to try to limit their intake to, okay, do it first thing in the morning and first thing at night. That way, if you can take off that mask. Or for like social media stuff, you have people getting bad information. You have people getting really anxious or angry when they see their friends totally disregarding safety precautions. They're flying to Mexico or Hawaii or whatever. And, just based on what your concerns are, whatever, everybody does their own thing. But those who have become so invested in like trying to stay safe, whatever, it's triggering to see, oh my gosh, I had no idea that so-and-so from college is going to be so lame and go to Mexico right now. Or or like, wow, why am I not brave enough to go to Mexico right now? What's wrong with me? You can twist it
Mm-hmm.
however your brain wants to go.
It is fascinating. This subject is incredibly rich. This is significant because it's a huge shift in how we, as humanity,
Yeah.
actually everyone with a smart device, which is
Yeah.
1.5 billion people, all
Mhm.
interact and have different sources and interconnect. And we're kind of rewiring as we go. We
Yeah.
have kind of that ADHD, the attention span deficit is changing because Twitter is aptly named because it just flitters right through your brain. You're like,
Yeah.
whoa. And you
What just
and you can
happened?
choose, yeah, and you can pick it up or you don't, but it doesn't matter. It's still going through your mind. And
Yeah.
it can be very, very dangerous. And I don't know that people, I was sharing with Jay in the intro that we were in Death Valley, extremely remote. And my favorite part of it was there was 0.0 connectivity. It didn't matter. Your phone was as good as a camera. That's all it was. And
Yeah.
that was awesome because it really, you're back in nature, you feel that organic self, your thoughts are your
Mhm.
own thoughts, you're not having to pick up other people's garbage, or
Right.
like I like to say, the comparative narrative, which is incredibly brutal on people's psyches.
Yep.
Oh,
Mm.
look, they're eating something wonderful, traveling to an exotic place. And I'm not, I'm in my same room that I've been in for the better part of a year. And that's
Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah. And in
Mm.
fact, I'm still
Mm.
in bed in my jammies. Well, yeah, and you raise a good point, and that is that one of the best ways to kind of ground yourself and reconnect, um, whether you're anxious, depressed, or any other thing, is get back to nature. Unplug the phone, disconnect, and get your feet in the dirt. Hear
Mm.
the leaves in the rustling in the trees, or you know climb a rock, or feel the sunshine. All of those things are incredibly grounding and
Oh,
rejuvenating, and we all need it right now.
I have to
Mm-hmm.
share two stories. You guys have to indulge me, please, for a half second, because this is
Sure.
pretty good. So one of them was that my son and I had gone to we were all as a family going into the sand dunes, and in Death Valley there are massive sand dunes, and they go
Yeah.
for a few miles. And so we decided to go to the furthest one, my son and I, and go to the very top of it. And soft sand is not friendly, and it is a lot longer than it looks. And you're out there hiking through it, and we're sludging through, and all of a sudden I saw a footprint. It wasn't a shoe print; it was a footprint. And I was like, "Oh my god!" And we took off our shoes and we walked barefoot. Not only did you feel the energy in the sand, and I know that's out there, but it was real. Like you felt connected to the earth, but it
Hmm.
was therapeutic. There was this stresslessness, and all of a sudden you got to move through the sand so much easier. I was like, "Ding! Let's be
Yeah.
organic." That relationship, right? And we had a really pretty actually mystical experience on the top of the sand dune, but that's a different story. But this is the true confession one I think you might enjoy. So my son knew about some waterfalls that are in the Mojave, excuse me, in Death Valley. And one is a pretty easy walk. It's kind of like a neutral flat and you get to it. But then he knew that you could scale the side of the very first waterfall. And if you really went up about probably 200 feet or more, and you could come up over the top of the ridge and come back down into a second canyon where there was a very pristine waterfall and a pool, and then even one further beyond that. He had done that before. And my son's an athlete. He's 21 now and he's strong, strapping, and fearless. And so anyway, so I said to yes, we're tootling through we're gonna go to do the first one. And I was like, okay, guys, but let's make sure as long as mom's comfortable, we can keep going, right? Okay, we go to the first waterfall and they start to Billy Goat up. And I'm telling you, it's Billy Goat. I'm like, holy smokes. I start going up and all of a sudden this anxiety, the vertigo just hit. And I was literally crippled. And I'm watching my kids and my wife just go as far as I can see. I can't see them. And it's a canyon, it's 200 feet high. And I'm petrified on the rock holding on. And my wife, God bless her, comes down and she's smiling at some level. And she looks at me and goes, and we'll just see how far mom can go, right? So I literally scooted back down, gripping the rock like I was, oh, thank God I'm back down on earth. And it was a real interesting idea that here I had this, kind of narrative that I was going to be fine. And I had this fear that I couldn't shake. And the only thing I could do was take a few minutes and deep breathe, slow down the heart rate,
Yeah.
appreciate where I was for the moment, become present, not projecting I'm going to fall or what if they fall, which were all the thoughts that were in my head. You know, my loved
Mhm.
ones are up there on this rock like billy goats in the desert where there's no helicopter coming. Your help is 5 miles down a road that you've got to
Yeah.
get to before you get to your car. And yet they had this incredible experience, and it was wonderful for them to see, because normally, like my wife said, she goes, I don't know if this is good for our marriage because you're always so strong and tough. I go, baby, I just showed you my vulnerable side. You found it. It's an Achilles heel. If it's
That's
not
like
your baking.
that's the perfect couples intervention right there. Okay, go 180 miles east and go into the desert and, see who follows whom.
It was so
Role
interesting.
reversal.
Role reversal. And it was actually, but it was one of those experiences. And here's the thing about it. I didn't approach it knowing that there would be fear or anxiety that would show up. I didn't know what other subliminal traps were in my mind, or the fact that I wasn't present in the moment with what I was doing. I was in projection. And I remember someone once telling me, like, you're never really static. You know, you're either kind of improving or you're decaying. It's always kind of some kind of balance, like the yin and yang symbol. There's always a movement. And you have to think about the exercises that help us relieve that stress and that tension. And typically in news stimulation and information and media, consumerism is a big part of that, right? I can bring things in, whether I'm eating or drinking or buying or shopping. But obviously, pandemic put a yield on that. I mean, it did to a degree. It impacted Amazon, so it did online shopping,
Right.
um, right? But it takes away some of the experience that people would have. So I would imagine you must have kind of people wanting to come see you and wanting to get in
Mhm.
to have time. It has to be that there's a upshoot in your business and profession. Have you seen that?
100%. I I yes. Like, what do I even say? I'm packed. I'm booked. I have very little, trying to even have an intake call or like call my own doctor has become challenging. Um, and yeah, and just recently, just taking on new clients as people kind of like have weathered all of this, they have their tools and are moving out. Um, and I can go back to accepting new clients again, but they're like, people are coming out from everywhere and just like, help me.
Mhm.
And like to speak to you, well, I mean, my mind's going pew. Um,
Right, right,
to speak
right,
to your point, Sean, about getting up there and all of a sudden confronting this fear. You had the best instinct, which is stop the thinking, here and now. Where am I? Okay, there's a rock, here's the sand, there's my family, I'm right here, I can feel the heat coming off the sand. It's like um pulling yourself out of the anxiety and getting into your body, which then, if you think about it just kind of like commonsensically, okay, you're not thinking, you're not connected to those thoughts that are going, Wah! You're back
right.
in your body going, oh, this is kind of nice, it's warm, I'm comfortable, I'm good. But so, like, those are the kinds of tools that when people come in, what can we do quickly when you're in that moment? And so,
Mhm.
as I said, like, people are kind of graduating or whatever as they've kind of addressed the issues that have come up during COVID. Those are the kinds of things. It's like, what do I do in that moment when I lose my mind and I feel like I'm having a heart attack, or, which might be a panic attack? Um, what
But
do I
it's
do?
fascinating, Danielle. Right. But that's the thing. And the Navy SEALs will say, and I went through this whole weekend of Navy SEAL training a few years ago,
Oh,
and
cool.
they're literally talking about sitting in a room for 36 hours that is 5 foot by 6 foot and focusing on one target, and you're not able to move. And your
Hmm.
mind is the most powerful tool that we can have. And that, Mark Divine would say we're one thought away from change constantly. And our mind is way more powerful. And our mind is what's controlling our body. Our
Yeah.
mind is what's controlling how we're feeling in that moment. And it's our mind that's telling us whether we're happy, sad, or tired or scared. And I hear folks say all the time, oh, no, you're just so tired. I was like, well, I think to myself, are you always tired because you think you're tired? Or are you always tired because that's the story you're telling yourself? And for me,
Hmm.
people are like, don't, why are you so so full of energy. It's like I tell myself I have unlimited amounts of energy, and
Mm,
what I think about, I bring about for myself. And people are, aren't you tired? It's like, I choose not to be tired. I choose to, be happy. I
mhm,
choose to
mhm.
be in the moment. I choose to have unlimited energy. And I choose to believe that, yes, I maybe could be the human version of Wonder Woman. And it's okay. It's okay. I don't have to have judgment around that or comparison or whatever. That's just what I believe that I'm capable of doing and that I'm going to power through.
Mhm.
And I'm only as tired as I allow myself to think I am,
Yeah.
So, and I imagine these days, Danielle, I mean, fortunately for technology, I mean, folks are able to connect with you via Zoom as a way to feel safe, but also get help. Because I know you said you might have pulled up some, that you did pull up some resources. Maybe we can share with the audience of ways that they can find help if they are not able to self-talk them through, and use some of the mindfulness techniques. And we had a great mindfulness coach on our show a few months ago, and she
Oh,
kind
how
of went
great.
took us through some things. But
Mhm.
I know that you know many things are real for people. Anxiety is real, fear is real, depression is real, and there are so many great places to get help. I think
Mhm.
most people get analysis paralysis, or they don't know how to take that first step. I know in human nature that
Yeah.
first step towards anything new is completely shrouded with fear.
Yeah,
Right?
definitely. It's scary. And it takes a little bit of oomph to pick up the phone or email or whatever. Um, and that is like the biggest step you can take. First of all, is just, is starting the process. One
Hmm.
thing though I should mention really quickly before I give resources is it's also really, there are a lot of symptoms of anxiety or depression that are also medical symptoms. So,
Yes, of course.
if these
Hmm.
are new symptoms, number one, check in with your primary care physician just to make sure you're not having, like all of a sudden you have
Hormonal changes
hypothyroid,
or
yeah,
right.
or
Mm.
because those two, you're lethargic, you gain weight, so check out that first, and then um, I think it depends on your budget, or how what your community looks like. Do you have friends who are in therapy? If you do, ask them like, "Hey, do you like your therapist? Would you recommend your therapist?" Um, or there's also the LA County Department of Health or of Mental
Mm.
Health, and they have a helpline that you can call and you can say, "Hey, I'm experiencing this, this, and this," and they can say, "That's an emergency. We'll, go here, you need to be hospitalized," or they'll
Hmm.
say, "Let me hook you up with a therapist." So that's like
Hmm.
a very good just go-to place. And let's see, the number for that is
It's funny,
71.
Sean. Your Judy is she's like very interesting guest, and she was laughing at your stories earlier. So just reading some of the chat that's going on for the show.
Thank you, Judy. Love you.
um, So for giving the LA County Department of Mental Health a call, it's 800-854-7771. And I will put these up on, I don't know if we're sharing this, but my personal or my
Hmm.
Please do.
professional Facebook, my LinkedIn, my website, all of that stuff. Um, but so Department of Mental Health, 800-854-7771. You can also, if you're in crisis, you text
Oh,
home to 741-741. And they will, again, they'll divert you to where you need to be. Um, you can also, just an easy number to remember is dialing 211. So, and that will refer you to, again, wherever, if it's a crisis, if it's, hey, I'm just looking for a therapist. Um, as a teen, if you don't feel like dealing with adults who are probably driving you crazy anyway, you can call
Mm.
a teen line, which is like a peer to peer. That there are teens who are trained in dealing with their peers' mental health, challenges. And that number is 800-852-8336, or you can text teen 612-839-863. Again, I'm going to put these up. Um, if you have like a little bit of time, you're like, gosh, I'm feeling like I could use a little, I need somebody else to talk to. I've talked my husband's ear off. My best friend is like not taking my calls anymore. Um, you can go to the Psychology Today website. I don't know if, it's Psychology Today, like the magazine. And you click on their Find a Therapist link, and you can put in your zip code. You can put in, I want to see a male therapist. I want to see a female therapist. I'm dealing with depression, or all of a sudden, I realize I might have ADHD. You can filter through symptoms, or, you know, is there a therapist who speaks Spanish? I don't know. You can filter all of that
Hmm.
stuff. It shows their pricing. It shows what insurance they take, all of that stuff. So that's a super great resource.
Hmm.
Um, let's see.
Well, I
And
love
it's,
the idea that you
Mhm.
have as many resources just to be able to immediately call, and that actually at some level, your city and your county and your state are prepared, saying, hey, look, we understand that this is a real crisis, a real need, and
Yeah.
hopefully averts other disasters. And the other thing that I'm thinking about relative to this is the people that are isolated,
Yeah.
checking in on neighbors and making sure they understand that there's a place, and you can call as simple as 211, or
Yeah.
that the texting hotline. I mean, that's unbelievable to me, because that is, because there's something about the anonymity of texting that keeps people protected. I'll just
100%.
text, right?
Mhm.
And I don't have to be as vulnerable.
Yep.
And what I've heard, without it really clearly being said, but it really is clear, is connectivity.
Yeah.
Connecting is the part, right? You by yourself, your battery's just going to fade. And
Yeah.
if you don't have the ability to exchange it and share it and move it along, that energy is can be toxic, and it's extremely difficult for people to manage. And
Yeah.
I'm
well,
so,
Sean keeps me from going crazy because thank God he's my very best friend, because he knows if we've gone too long and I haven't really kind of come out of my whirlwind to check in once in a while, or he doesn't check in once in a while, or I don't check in with him once in a while, I kind of go off in my tangent of just crazy activities. And he's like, oh boy, I'm sensing I better check in with her because she's
Where'd she
probably
go?
needs the
we'll,
bounce board.
Gotta
we
rein
will
her in.
we'll reel her back a little bit. Well, somebody once gave us, a client of ours, Dave Lazowski, he gave it to me once. He goes, well, you have to think of your partner as a woman on fire. And I thought about the image that he was giving me, really. And I thought, well, that's Jay Wu. She's moving. She's running like she's on fire. Like, this is who she is. But the good part is, and I was like, but I'm okay with it, because she's comfortable with that. She has a high threshold. But I think that's the other thing to know too, and to Jay's own confession right here, is as much balance as we have, as much strength as we appear to have, the fact is we're all vulnerable. We're all susceptible to these moments. And I would say to anybody who's out there, that is feeling frustrated or pent up or insecure or uncertain or full of doubt or frustration with others, rather than taking them out, seek out the counsel of a therapist, pray for professional, without judgment, with skills to help
Mhm.
assess, and give tools to offload, right? To literally
Yeah.
offload the thought processes and not allow yourself to be crippled by them. I think
Yeah.
what you provide is a very, very valuable service.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know why my
I-
video keeps flittering in and out. But
Because you're on
if
fire.
if it, yes, right,
Very,
exactly. The temperature got too hot. No,
well,
if it's not Zoom, it's not technology, then I don't know what we would have these days. Going wonky.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously.
are you able to do therapy via Zoom? Is that something that's happening now? I mean, you would have to, right? For the
Yeah,
last,
well, and I actually continued to see about half of my clients in person up until Thanksgiving, and then I didn't want to deal with the surge.
right.
So, but yeah,
True.
we actually I co-led a group, even speaking of like being individual and in isolation, co-led a group that we did on Zoom, or actually it was Google Meet, but whatever, online, so that people could connect and share their issues. That was, and we provided skills. That was really helpful. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, there were a lot of people, myself included, who were a little bit hesitant to jump on screen. You're so right there. You don't have your space. You don't. I don't know. There's something that was a little bit daunting. especially for those who are like a little bit, they have body image issues. They don't want to see themselves. So, you turn off your camera or whatever, or you turn off your where you see yourself. Um, but yeah, I'm seeing everybody online right now. And so the biggest challenge for a lot of people is having a private place to talk. So, I have my own office here. Plenty of people are calling in from their bedroom. I have clients in bed, they're squishy in their pillows and comfy, and we're talking there, or like I'll log in and they're in their closet. They've moved the clothes aside, and they're, you see the hamper here, and they're like in the closet, or in their car, or wherever. I've done.
Well, privacy is real, though. Space is real for
Yes.
people, which is why we're experiencing what we're experiencing. People
I
are
bet.
trying to shift that space issue and
I
what they've
bet.
been living in for almost a year. And they're obviously nationally, people are saying, I've had enough. I need to change
Mhm.
my spatial context and figure out how to have some improvement around it. So I can imagine
Yeah.
that folks having lack of privacy or being in a small little space and wanting to have that ability to change that. So I could totally see that. But also the flip side of it is maybe more folks can reach for help and connect because they can stay in their squishy with their weighted blanket or whatever makes them feel kind of held, together, and be able to connect to a therapist like you and talk through what they're feeling and kind of be more vulnerable about and truly be honest about where they're at versus going to a doctor's office, feeling like they're sitting there in someone else's environment and trying to tap into something that's, very, very, painful for them. Maybe it's easier to so maybe some of that is helping. Some of these people know how to get the help. That's our greatest concern is, you know, that's the hardest part for folks, whether it's marriage counselors, because I know my family law attorney friends are all like, wow, there's a lot of divorces happening right now, a lot of cases being filed,
Mhm.
as well as, people, and unfortunately the depression rate has gone up so significantly. And fortunately, I don't worry about my teenagers, but I just feel like there's students right now, they're so disconnected and challenged.
Well, Nevada, Las Vegas actually had to open their school system because the rate of suicide was
Oh,
skyrocketing. That's why they did it,
I hadn't heard
not
it.
because of
Oh, wow.
yeah, they actually did
I
that because
believe it.
they really did. And you have to think about a child, right? They haven't dealt with, in most cases, well, that's not even a fair statement on its own, but the trauma and life experiences and experience, right? They're young.
Mhm.
So the formulation for skill sets to handle adversity and
Right.
survive, those are usually underdeveloped. And then they're wired differently than this generation. Every generation rewires, right? They're, you can hand a 2-year-old your iPhone and they will download and have a password and be able to connect to the world and download any app they want to do. And I will sit here and text like this, like send, but it's rewired, and they're designed to do that, right? There's a part of their brains, the neurosynapses, that have created these pathways that they have the ability to do it. But it leaves it with different stresses, and it leaves with other new problems. It's a constant evolution, and in that evolution there's a byproduct to it. And there can be, ironically, through the connection of the online, a total disconnect,
Mhm.
right? Because you're missing that organic part of exchange. I
Yeah.
know of the things I miss, the hug is the thing I miss the most. I
Yeah.
really, I really miss being able to just share that breath and that heartbeat and that warmth and that
Yeah.
I'm here for you. And my dad and mom, similarly, older, successful, very accomplished, worldly, traveled extensively,
Mhm.
very fearful of the pandemic, extremely
Yeah.
fearful, and basically isolated for a year, just
Same with
like
my
that
mom.
wonderful, right? And it's
Yeah.
and I'm like, God bless it, it stole a year from them. That's not
Yeah.
fair,
Not at
you
that
know?
age. Yeah. It's
No.
so frustrating, that part. Yes. totally. I haven't seen my mom in a year, and we both are now vaccinated, so we're planning our
Oh, good for
reunion.
you. Good
Thank
for
you.
you.
Congrats.
But yeah, that's been the saddest part. Well, there's so many sad parts, but yeah, the elderly, or the seniors who are terrified of leaving, because it's like it's a death sentence, or could be, or like the perception that, like, hey, let's just open everything up. And my mom at one point was like, wait, so does that mean that I'm disposable? I'm dispensable? Wow,
Mm.
that makes me feel really crappy. And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
terrible. Yeah.
Well, I
Um,
think one thing we've learned though is that everything was kind of starting to become manageable until that second wave hit, and then that second more intense lockdown hit, and through November and December and January. And I feel like now that the weather's kind of warmed up, we're starting to kind of come out of it a little bit. Like, okay, can we kind of have a little semblance of life again? But up until that point, at least through the summer and fall, okay, you can still dine out and go do things. But that second lockdown totally pushed us back into a whole nother state of wow, this is we're gonna
yeah.
be extra good and quarantine and everything. And that's hard to be away from, family for so long,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
and that one hit particularly hard too, because, it's darker.
Yeah.
There's less daylight,
that's real.
Yes.
right? Which is
That's real.
already an issue. And
That's
then you
right.
Yes.
have the holidays, and, most people, many people did not get together, or they got together with a select, safe pod of people. Or you also have students who were online learning, at least, who, and this runs the gamut from, kindergarten to PhD
Oh,
candidates, where you also don't have your classes or your schoolwork or whatever.
That's
You're
right.
on vacation. And so it's like, okay,
mhm.
it's dark, we are back in lockdown, classes are, are suspended. um, you can't go into work. If you work in the restaurant industry, you are, or any, kind of public facing kind of thing, you aren't dealing with your people anymore. And so it's like, it was, a double whammy, triple whammy. I don't know. That was a hard hitting time.
It,
Yeah, I
you
agree.
bring up something that I think is it really, and it comes out in our profession all the time. The
Hmm.
power of natural light. One
Yes.
of the things that makes Los Angeles a destination like Paris and like New York City and or London is that they are cities with great light. They're known to have their own unique kind of light and the angle and to the sun. And we know that this time of year there's a golden light as it sunsets. It's different. It's like an orangey yellow, and it's very rich and vibrant. So it's interesting psychologically when I was breaking down two houses for a client, he preferred one house. And I explained to him, I said, well, let me explain to you what I see. When you live in it day in and day out, you're going to be turning on lights unless you like to live in the shade because you're going to be living in shadow. This other house is on a promontory and has exposure. And I brought out my compass and I actually showed him, I go, you're going to have light all day in this house. Whereas in
Cool.
this other house, you're going to be in the shade, the shadows of for more than half the day. And I go, I'm just telling you, light creates vibrancy. We have a chemical reaction. I know that when I wasn't feeling well, because true confessions, we experienced COVID in my household. The
Oof.
sunlight was the only thing that made me feel good. When I would
Yeah.
sit in the sun, 20 minutes, half hour, and you'd feel restored, and you just knew there was an organic process that was taking place. It was really healthy. And
Yeah, I
anyway,
recommend that to most of my clients who are suffering from depression, at least depression, if not everything, but to get 10, 15 minutes of sunshine, because it resets our circadian rhythm, it affects our hormone levels, our vitamin D, which, by the way, not a medical doctor, just putting that out there. um,
yes,
Speaking beyond my therapy scope, but I, in my past life, I wrote about private jets and things like that, and I know that Boeing, what, or not Boeing, um, the Challenger jets were putting in Bombardier, that's the name, uh, lighting that simulated daylight or nighttime, so that you could do the red eye to Tokyo and wake up ready to hit the ground running. But you know, they messed with the light. They engaged people who knew how to do that. And so I tell everybody, you know, go outside, get some sunshine, get it, you know, reboot. So therapeutic. Yeah,
Well, I feel like with the coming of spring comes hope and freshness and a
yes,
rebirth of possibilities. And I think we are all feeling like, and I know Shauna and I think this all the time, we're there's light at the end of the tunnel. There is an organization now of, okay, we're gonna get to the end of this. And every day that passes, more vaccines go into people's arms. Those are
mhm,
the group of folks that are safe, also not, hopefully, it, everything just compounds, starts to lessen in terms of risk and hopefully infections and so forth. And so uh, we're hopeful that we're coming to hopefully the other side of this sooner rather than later, knowing at least by June. But fortunately in LA, 72 and sunny almost every day. We have
yes.
access to the sunlight and access to look at the light shining through your window as well. And yeah, recommending for folks to take a deep breath, go sit out in the sunshine. If even if it's 10 minutes of just taking that in and finding that place of calm and peace, we can
Yes.
all get through this together.
Yes, hear ye.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us today,
Thank you
Danielle,
for
and
having
all of
me.
that. Yeah, all that great information. We never know what the ripple effect of change will be by providing information. And I know Shauna and I constantly work towards how can we be a source of information that someone listening today maybe needed to hear this message and be the ripple effect of change. And so we want to leave the world better than we found it. And by sharing great information from wonderful folks like you, we get to do that, one person at a time, right?
Yay. Well, thank you so
Hey,
much for having me. Thank
Thank
you.
you,
thank you, Danielle,
Danielle.
for joining
You
us.
enriched our days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Awesome. All right. Wow, that was great. I mean, talk about some great information, and also for anxiety and hopelessness is real for a lot of people. And I mean, in what, 2 weeks, it's going to be a 1 year since the first lockdown. March 13th or 12th was the first lockdown. And we thought, oh, it'll be a couple weeks, couple months. Now it's a year.
Right, right. It definitely, it's interesting too, though, as we age, we realize how short a year actually really is. It
Mhm.
seems like forever at different points, but then you look back and go, wow, it's been a year already, to your point. I can most definitely recall uh, December of 19, looking at some international information, seeing something was taking place in China in the Wuhan district and being aware of it, thinking, oh, that's kind of weird. And having been a Michael Crichton fan and read Contagion and all these other books that were talking about how viral things can be, I was just kind of
Uh,
scoping it. And I was quick out of the gate. I was like, okay, I can lock up and go boom. Because you could see it. But then there's the other part too, right? Is what it did, what it's done to our society. So I think it's really important for people to continue the conversations with people like Danielle, skillful people that give you clues and hints and guidance to how to shift your mindset, how to address issues and anxieties and fears and things that create trepidation and inaction and allow for healing to take place, because that's clearly where
mhm.
we're hopefully need to be as a society and whole. And I'm certainly hopeful that it will translate economically. I have some concerns about our small businesses. I worry about them quite a bit. So I try to support them because I think that's an action that we can take that's
Yes.
actionable. So I don't feel helpless. I feel like, okay, I can participate. I'm going to go shop here or do something there versus some of the convenience that's out there. But the other part of it too is
Yep.
that we see it
You'd
in
be
our
happy to
business.
know I had my first Crack Shack fried chicken last night. So
I can't even believe you said that, because it is coming close to lunchtime soon. And I'm sitting here thinking like, oh, what do I got to get to eat? A little something to treat myself because I've been pretty good this week. And now you just said Crack Jack. So now all of a sudden I'm starting to like Homer Simpson this with a little salivation, like, oh, because they have some really good stuff in there. Did you enjoy it? What do you remember the flavor that
I
you chose?
no, I just did the family the fried chicken. pack, and oh my God, it's so good.
Fried chicken is pretty much, it's hard to not do good fried chicken. But there are some really standouts, and that's a standout for sure.
The boys are happy, but no, you stay good. You get your tuna fish or something healthy for yourself. You know, you don't need to go down that path. I just had a little wing. I didn't go crazy.
No, you don't need to soft pedal it. I worked out hard today. No, because there are those, but that's the other part too, and I'm sure Danielle will talk about that. For people, is like, look, you also need to have a little reward, something that gives you something that says, okay, you've gone through whatever it is navigating. And between you and I, as you well know, we have been tremendously productive and busy. I mean, the calendar, I had someone, we send these Calendly links, which is really cool, the tool that you showed me. And so now I copy it on my email and I send it to people like, hey, if you want to talk to me, I just schedule a time and a link, because there's too many calls, there's too many emails, there's too many text messages. It's kind of insane, right? And I get some snarky responses from some people. I'm like, okay, you don't have to, because I'm not calling you. I'm too freaking busy, right? Processing. And that's why I feel justified to have my reward, because I know how hard we're working and navigating stuff and talking about that. And, you have been chasing for several clients and relentlessly pursuing multiple properties, the marketplaces you now have an understanding of and a mastery of, quite frankly, whether you're out in the valley from all the way from Studio City across to Woodland Hills, and or if you want to come back down and go through Culver City and Westchester, and then even in our own neighborhood. And it's funny because we both have buyers that are working in a couple of the same markets, and so I see which ones you're going to, and I'm like, oh well, Jay's discerning that one. That's interesting. There was one on Truxton that it came to mind. I was like, oh, I know that one on Truxton. It's not real near Manchester, but it's also what the restaurant Truxton's was named after, because it's the street.
Yes.
And right. But it's been really productive. And I wanted to be able to suggest that, we've had some real success stories, and I'm going to humble brag one, that we had a property that came on the market in the Westwood Hills area, which those who might know is an affluent community just west of UCLA in the hills. And my client had gone out and looked at different properties and had been going online, et cetera, and found this house. Now, what's super interesting is he had a hard stop budget at 2.5 million, and which is, a first world problem, a champagne problem, but wow, okay, he had a hard stop and he knew he couldn't exceed that. Well, the house was asking almost 2.8 when he started. And I was like, what are you looking at that for? That's not this marketplace. That's not right. So we kind of dismissed it, and interesting, right? But I made a note of it. And then about 2 weeks later, I noticed they dropped the price. Not huge, but by 100 grand, which is somewhat significant, but in those numbers, not terribly. And I thought, okay. So now I started to engage him a little bit. We started talking about it, and he started doing some analysis. Now, it just so happens that one of the people he was buying the house with is one of LA's most significant real estate holders. I mean, he's a wizard, to say the least, and a wonderful, just a fountain of information. I can't even believe what I've learned in the short time I've gotten to know this person. And we knew the analysis had to be dollar per square foot and what the averages were. We just had to have the math killed on this house. And our analysis was this particular house was going to be a good buy, was below our barrier at it was 2.4. Well, they're still at 2.7. So I said, hey, we're just going to have to wait it out. Like, if it comes around, we're going to have to wait, but we're going to have to track the timing and notice the cadence. Well, I wouldn't be darned if another 10 days goes by and another price drop. Now I know. Wow. I'm like,
just
here's the trigger,
days.
right? Here's what's happening. They've got 2 price drops. There's motivation here. That person has found something. They're either relocating or they found something that they want. And so I said, you have to be patient, wait for us to do it. I go, but what would be a price that you just couldn't even believe, right? And he came up with a number, and I was below, considerably below. I thought, okay, well, we're going to have to wait for one more drop. And sure enough, another week goes by, another drop. So we put out the bait. And when I say the bait, we made an incredibly strong offer at our price. And I will tell you that we were able to get it under contract for $500,000 less than what they were able to start. And that was planning, strategizing, looking at the signs, paying attention to the market, doing the analysis of the numbers, understanding what was being said without being said when the seller was manipulating their price. And I would say to anybody who's selling, don't negotiate against yourself. Every time you price drop, you're negotiating against yourself. When
Mm-hmm.
you price something genuinely, like you did on Pelham, you get the yield. You get to exceed what happens on Pelham, and you get 12% above your asking price because you did the right thing, you planned, and you executed the plan. In this particular case, this other way, it worked in our favor. Now, it was a strategy. I love the agents on the other side. They're fantastic. The house was phenomenal. The inspection was like literally bring a toothbrush. That's all you need to do in this house, which was wonderful. It created a goodwill, but it talks about the need for preparation and strategy, and also never say never, because when he first looked at that house, I was like, why are we doing that? That's a waste of time. It's beyond your budget by 300,000. And sure enough, guess what? I got it for $500,000 less than the top dollar that they were asking. So it's kind of cool to do that. It's fun. It's going to close in another week, and I'm excited for them and for their transition, and it will lead to more business for us in a lot of different ways. But those are the things that we try to do for people, and really connect with them, really listen to them, and try to work together. And it's been fun, but it's an exercise of a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of investment to things going on behind the scenes.
One thing about your noggin, boy, you know how to tool around all the strategies. That's the brilliancy, right? Of Johnny Mac, is like that brain and bounce forward the various if this and that. It's like a chess game. It is all of that you just went through is a chess game. And you're great at the patience and looking for the signs, whereas I'm the opposite. I want to drive it the other way, and so it's good to have both sides covered, because I love to drive the price up. And you in negotiation, obviously, when it's our client, it's like always, how can we, utilize the time structure that's kind of gone on here and what's happening, and also be willing to just, okay, if something else swoops in, we got to be okay to let it go,
Right.
So
Right.
and that's the key part of all of that, so.
Well, it's
Amazing.
exciting. We really counsel people, like especially buyers. It's a hard market, and it kind of leads to my next prediction. I have a strong sense that because the single family market is so hyper competitive, that unless we get more inventory, you're going to see buyer fatigue and frustration. The buyers are going to be like, I just can't go into another 20 person multiple offer situation where 20 people are bidding. That is too strenuous, hard to understand. When you get something more manageable, single digits, 6, 7, 8, okay, we can play the math, and it's a little easier. But when there's 20, you just know somebody's going to have, your odds are diminishing. There's just more people you're competing with. But I do think that's going to translate at some level into the wonderful, affordable opportunity of quality townhomes and condominiums. Like those living spaces are significant. I saw one yesterday where on Doheny, or we have 2 coming up in Westwood, where you get real great access to everything. You have a huge pedestrian score for resources. You have great living spaces. And they are really affordable comparative to single family homes. The single family dirt in most of the areas we're looking, you're tearing down a house at $1.3 million or $4 million, whereas here you can have a really finished product and a great place to live. And so I would counsel people strongly consider that as a good alternative right now. And I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, believe that that's going to come into fruition, where that market's going to start to see some health injected back into it. Because as you and I both know, that condominium market has been very soft for the better part of 6 months.
Well, we're in a city. Density is just a necessity of life, right? And density provides affordability. And so, we kind of have to think back to, okay, I get the fact of all this other needs, but if you want to have proximity to certain aspects of the city that we live in, density is unfortunately a part of, unfortunate as well, part of our everyday life. And to have that as a part of the structure is, it's what, because finances are not unlimited for folks, right? So we have to be cognizant of the fact that, okay, within the budget constraints that you have and wanting to provide a roof over your head for the family, like what's the next best option to explore?
Oh, that's for sure. Well, I see we're running out of time, but I want one more little thing I wanted to plug, if I may share. I wanted to acknowledge my sister-in-law, Karen Friedman-Ignifilo, who just retired from the District Attorney's Office of Manhattan, New York, as the Chief Deputy Assistant of the DA's office there for, I think her career was minimally 25 years. I want to congratulate her parents and everyone around her. Her accomplishments are just of an incredible magnitude. And I have
Wow.
to say that it is just fantastic to have seen it. And I will say her send off was even more humbling. It was a tremendous, there was bagpipes and the district attorney and all the police officers lined the street, and a police squad car that was issued in the year that she joined, literally sat there and took her home for her last day. So I just want to congratulate my sister-in-law, Karen, on an
Wow. That's
amazing career.
amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
I hadn't heard
Back,
that yet. Oh my God, that's so great.
it's pretty cool.
Congrats to
Thank
the
you.
family. That's awesome. All
Well,
right,
thank you,
dude.
my
Well,
dear.
over our
Big
time.
hug.
But thank you.
Okay. Have a wonderful day.